Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Quill and Curtain podcast, the podcast for playwrights by playwrights. This is Darrin Friedman, and today we have the podcast veteran of all veterans, George Sapio. He has been doing podcasts for a long time. George
just made me sound really old, but that's okay.
No, you're not old. You're not old. You just experienced, my dear sir, experienced the difference. Anyway, George believes in learning all there is making theater happen. He's not just a playwright, but he has worked extensively as a director, producer, dramaturg, and designer. His plays have been commissioned by the Kitchen Theater and Actors Workshop of Ithaca. His play Ghosts won the prestigious 2001 Panowski Award, and Oatmeal and Cigarette was selected as a critic pick at the 2008 Cincinnati Fringe. Several of his plays have been published by both Broadway Play Publishing and Next Stage Press. Ding ding for Gene Cato. For the last 12 years, he's produced and hosted the podcast On Stage, Off Stage Theater podcast, and it is excellent. So if you haven't listened to it, you need to. It has over 180 episodes of interviews with theater professionals from around the world. In response to fellow playwrights asking about his development experience, he wrote a workshopping book called Workshopping the New Play, a guide for playwrights, directors, and dramaturgs, an introductory book for the early stage theater professionals. And because Ithaca, New York needed some fresh and exciting new blood, he co-founded along with his wife the
Morris Stevens
Festival for 4 years. How long's the Fringe Festival been going on?
Fringe Festival ran for 4 years.
Excellent. And apart from theater, he is also a photojournalist whose book, Collateral Damage, features his pictures from 2 trips to Iraq in 2003, which sounds pretty scary, to be honest. Welcome, George. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be fun.
Oh, I can't wait to talk to you, because actually it's been one of, you do so many different things. And I have actually been kind of a fan of yours. I think your podcast is great. I think the things that you do is great. You're varied. You do a lot of different kinds of things. And I really wanted to talk to you about kind of breaking it down. What I know some people like to pigeonhole each other. What do you want to be known as, or do you want to be known as everything?
Oh boy, that's a tricky question, because the first thing that comes to mind is playwright. I want to be a playwright, but I also love everything else about theater. I mean, I even love designing the posters. I've cleaned bathrooms. I've designed sets and lights, and I love directing. There's no place I'd rather be in this world than besides a rehearsal room. So yeah, it's if it's theater, count me in. Let's do it.
Well, let's talk about theater. I was going to ask you playwriting questions, but initially, your passion seems to be doing a lot of different kinds of things. So what drew you to theater initially? When did you know theater was your path?
Oh boy. Okay. I'm going to try and make this story under 2 minutes.
You can make it as long as you want. It's not like we have a hard...
No, I know. I hate drawing out stories. Brevity is part of playwriting. I try to do that when I'm speaking as well. Many years ago, I was at a performance of a Pinter play, which, without going into the details, seemed to be beset with more problems than I've ever seen happen to any play before or since, including set, actors, and it was... And we were at the cast party, and it was probably 2:30 in the morning, and people were drowning their sorrows copiously. And the director, who was a professor of mine at the time, an English professor, and Ron Starmer, an absolutely wonderful person and one of the best teachers I've ever had, sidled up to me because he knew my writing. I was writing short stories and novels at the time. And he said, "I want you to write us a play." And I just looked at him and I gave him a brief 2-word response. And he said, okay. He nodded. He said, tell you what, well, if you do it, you write it, we'll put it on next year. And I looked at him again, and I gave him the same brief 2-word response. And he said, "What if I let you direct?" I said, "When do you need it?" So my first play was Headstrong, which, by the way, just got published 30 some odd years later by Next Stage Press. And yes, ding, ding to Gene Cato. We love you. And I wrote it in 4 days. I've never written anything in 4 days since then. My 10-minute plays take me a week, 2 weeks, sometimes a month. And they did it. He's good to his promises. We put it up that next year. And he allowed me to direct, which taught me many things. One was I didn't know squat about directing, and I knew less about theater, but somehow we managed to get this thing up, and the audience seemed to like it. And I was kind of hooked. And the next play I wrote was Ghosts, which was a completely different vein. And that's the one that got the Panowski Award. Now, remember, these are the days when you were making multiple copies, Xeroxing, putting in, sending by mail, doing return envelopes, all that stuff. And I get a call one day, and I had just gotten 2 rejection slips in the mail that day. So I was not feeling very good. And I get a call, and it's the fellow on the other end of the line says, "George, this is Dr. James Panowski. And I'm calling to inform you that you've been selected as the winner of the 2001 Panowski Award." It was a couple of seconds of silence, and I was like, "Are you shitting me?" And he said, No, this is absolutely real, and we're going to... And he outlined this whole program for me and bringing me up during the summer so we could workshop the play, which I'd never heard of before. And they were going to do a production in November. And after that experience, which was beyond amazing, absolutely beyond amazing, I knew that's what I was. I knew I was a playwright because writing has never felt so purposeful, has felt so easy, I wouldn't go with easy, but it's so pleasurable. Even with the rewrites, even with the many rewrites at 4:00 in the morning. But it was an experience I wanted to replicate over and over and over again. So that's what I've been doing for the past years.
What was your 2-word response?
Fuck you.
Nice. Okay. So what inspires your plays?
Ooh, that's tough to say. Some of my plays are historical. I am an historian at heart. My university degree was in secondary ed history, and I find history fascinating. It's the best way to describe us as humans, by seeing what we've done over the years, and not so much as what, where, who, and when, but why. Why is really what history is all about. Yes, we can give you tests to test your knowledge of how well you've paid attention in class, but unless you understand why, you're not going to understand being human. You're not going to understand our history. And that's the same thing for playwriting. Playwriting is all about why. It's not so much what. We have so many things that we put into playwriting. But playwriting is a story of a conflict. Why did the conflict happen? Somebody made a bad decision. What were the responses to that? Were there more bad decisions? Oh, this is a good play. Were there better decisions? What was the struggle, and what happened at the end? Does the protagonist succeed, or does the protagonist fail? And that's the basis for all of my plays, really. But as far as inspiration, I just wrote one where I had an idea 5 years ago from something I overheard somebody in a cafe say, that the diner down the block was naming their dishes after local heroes. And I immediately thought, what if they named them after executed criminals? And that one, I wrote that one down. I didn't do anything with it until probably about a month ago. So that's one inspiration. I like to write about the things I see around me. I'm a skeptic. I'm highly cynical. And I don't really listen to the advertising hoo-ha that most of the channels and advertising places put out. So being a student of history, I know it's going to be something else. So I look for those reasons. And I've written plays about women's issues, the way women are ignored, belittled, disrespected in American society. And it happens all the time. It still happens. It happens every day. And no matter what we tell ourselves, I've written plays, about poisoners, in Roman poisoners, a woman poisoner in the 15th century in Rome who plied her trade for 25 years until she was caught. And the question with that is she a good person? Is she a bad person? Why was she doing this? That's the crux of the biscuit here. Why? So inspiration comes from anywhere. It's impossible to nail down, and I never know when the next one will hit. But I try and run with whatever happens and make my characters, even if they're despicable, understandable and somewhat sympathetic.
Walk me through your writing process from the first word on the blank page to sending it off for publication. What is your process?
Okay. I'm going to couple together my short plays and my long plays because they both follow pretty much the same thing. I almost never, I think with 3 exceptions out of over a dozen full-length plays and probably 40 or 50 short plays, I never put a word down unless I know the ending. Once I know the ending, I know where the play is going, because to me, the ending is the critical part of this whole thing. Does it land? Does it make sense? At the end of the play, do we have a finality? Do we have a result? With a short play, it's pretty much one scene. It's a small struggle. It's a very small struggle. Does it succeed? Does it fail? With a much longer play, what are the obstacles? It's a series of short plays. It's all the troubles that the protagonist goes through. So for me, the ending has to be right, or I don't start. And I have to know what the beginning is, because that's the second most critical piece, which is the initial crisis. I call it the Passover moment, because Passover is, why is this day different than any other day? And that rings true with playwriting. You can't have an interesting play unless something out of the ordinary happens. Something's got to happen to these poor folks. Somebody's got to make a bad decision. So why is today different? Why is Thursday completely different from Monday? So once I get that, I start thinking about this, and this is long before I ever start putting words down on paper. What happens in between? Who are these people? What are their personalities? Are they aggressive? Are they passive? Does their gender come into it? Does their politics come into it? And I ruminate on this for a while until I get bits and pieces. Then I start writing. Once I know that there are beginning and end and certain milestones that have to happen in the middle, I start writing. And after a little while, I realize I've stopped writing and my characters have started. If I'm drawing good characters, they become, and you've heard this a million times from other playwrights, they start telling me where they want to go. They start throwing in lines I didn't know they were going to say. And because it's a natural consequence of what's happened before, I usually let them run with it. They make their own plays interesting. So I'll go through the first part of getting everything I can on paper. It's my vomitorium. Everything that comes out in reference to this play gets dumped on the page. And for me, I usually overwrite. For a 45-page play, I'll probably churn out maybe 70, 80 pages of just everything that I think is relevant. Then I start picking and choosing. And this is where development comes in. This is where workshopping comes in. I probably spend 8, 9, 10, 12 drafts refining, taking stuff out, looking for the stuff that's not important that I put in to get to the stuff that is important. And I trim it down as much as possible. Then when I'm ready, and I feel like I'm not going to be wholly embarrassed by it, I get some friends and colleagues, and we sit around a table, and I let them read. I get a director whom I trust, and they run the show. And I sit in the back, and I keep my mouth shut, and I make notes. And what sounded good in my head might not sound good on the page, or sound good around the table, so that gets cut. Somebody will do a line a certain way. I'll say, "Oh, wait a minute, hold on. That leads me to why didn't I see that before?" Bang, and that goes in. And then once we've bashed it out on the page, on the table, we do a staged reading. And we invite the public. Stage readings are, they are very good things. They can be very ornery things. And the good thing is you get it out in front of the public and you watch the audience and you see where they react. Do they laugh at the jokes? Gosh, I hope they laugh at the jokes. Oh my God. Which is one thing that always happens to me. I always lose my best joke. I'm so clever, it just doesn't fit, but it's beautifully funny. And yep, we got to take it out. And the ornery part about staged readings is the talkback at the end. And that's critical. Because the talkback needs to be specifically run by a director who knows what they're doing and who asks the right questions, because audiences can get wildly out of control with the wrong questions. The one wrong question you never ask an audience is, so what did you think about that? And which just opens it up for every comment to, I thought the play was too long, I fell asleep, to, it needs zombies. But so you have your structured questions and you're looking for certain things. Now, but in the process that you've had with the director and with the actors, the playwright should be able to come up with issues. Does the ending land? Is this reaction from a particular character in scene 4 legitimate? Does it work, or are we stretching this? Is there enough backstory for this secondary character to be an instrumental figure in the workings of the play? You get about 4 or 5 questions and you pitch them to the audience. And that's where you get your good answers. That's also where you see where the conflicts really resonate. I had a play a number of years ago called Fault Lines, published by Next Stage Press, yay. And there came a scene where the wife had a decision to make, and the decision she made was to keep her husband and talk about their difficulties or toss him out. And she tossed him. And one of the big things in that particular talkback was, she'd never, oh, that's ridiculous. I don't believe that. And no, that was perfectly logical. You have to keep that. And the lines to which they split were gender. The men believed, no, she'd never do that. That's ridiculous. And the women literally came up to me after and said, if you change it, I will hurt you. Because they felt so strongly about it. So once I get it to that point, and once I get it to where I'm happy with the way it is, I'll let it sit for a while, then I'll come back to it in a few months and see what happens. And then I start sending it out. And then that's a whole nother beast about where to send it, how to send it. Is it right for the venue? Is it what they're looking for? Is it remotely what they're looking for? Because they're probably not going to accept it if it's only remote. But if it resonates with their mission, if it matches their history and the mission of the theater, yeah, go for it. It's a difficult thing sending out, because the natural instinct is to send everything out. You just throw out 300 plays and you get 5 hits. It's not the best thing, because theaters get overwhelmed with stuff they don't need. I know from asking for plays for on-stage, off-stage, and that if I get 200 plays, maybe a quarter of them resonate, maybe a quarter of them are actually correct for what it is I'm looking for, according to the guidelines I've set down. So, yeah.
What do you think your biggest challenge is when you approach your work?
Biggest challenge? I would say making it the best it can be, exploring the issues. It's not enough to just raise an issue. It's not enough to say this is an X type of play. This is a gender-based play. This is a politics-based play. It needs to, whatever the situation is, it needs to get in there and it needs to explore as deeply as it can. And that usually means discomfort, and that usually means pain. If not for me, then for the characters. And are you willing to go that far? There are light entertainments, and of which I've written more than my share. But there are also those plays that should change you a little bit. Those plays that you cannot forget. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to write something that you will remember 6 months from now, that you'll remember 2 years from now. I'm trying to write a play that affected you. that got under your skin and made you see something maybe that you've always believed in a slightly different way. I'm not looking to convert. I'm looking to open up your scope on the world. Okay, I'm looking to just expand a little bit, introduce something and make you think of something in a new way. Doesn't have to be major, doesn't have to be life-shattering. But yeah, if I can make your evening at the theater worth it, because face it, you got to pay money for this. You got to get dressed up. You've got to go out. It's probably going to include dinner. It's an expensive evening. I need to make it worth it for you.
Tell me about your perspective on collaboration. You talk about working with excellent directors. You're a director yourself. You've talked about workshopping. Tell me about the collaboration process with you and what you feel about and how you feel about it.
Theater is collaborative. I repeat that probably 8 or 9 times in my book, Workshopping the New Play, and it is. The first part of this for me is non-collaborative, where I come up with the draft that is ready to be shared with the world and explored and developed. I need to know what the audience will potentially think, so I need to know what my fellow colleagues will think. And when it comes to working with a director and actors, I need to choose wisely, and I need to listen to their reactions. I can pick and choose. I don't have to take somebody's suggestion. Every word, every comma is up to me. It is my play. I will decide what goes into it. But I would be a fool if I disregarded the comments of my colleagues when it comes to reactions to what I've written. So it's a pick and choose situation. Like I said, if I trust these folks, then I know I'm in good hands and I feel safe. And I've had a director come up to me on one of my historical plays. He says, I love this thing. This is great. Scene 5 has to go. I was like, okay, give me reasons. And he laid out probably 4 or 5 reasons. They were all legitimate. And I had to look at this in a new way. And I realized if I took scene 5 out, scene 6 would have a hell of a lot more impact coming right after scene 4. So I cut it. I've cut lines because actors had a problem saying them. I had to rewrite them. I've put in stuff because actors felt they needed more justification to get to this particular end of a scene. George, this is too easy. I'm walking in here and it's a small argument, but I just don't feel it's powerful enough for me to make this decision to get to the end of the scene to do what I need to do next. Okay, fine. So, well, let's work on that. Let's explore that. And every word on the page comes out of my brain. But to get that stuff to come out of my brain, I need to trust my colleagues, and I need to sit there with my company and my temporary family, because that's really the joy of theater, is you get a bunch of people in there that you like, you grow to respect, you love watching them work, and they become part of you. They become part of this particular production. So you learn to trust them. It's also perfectly fine to say no. No, I'm not going to change that. I like that the way it is because I feel it does this, this, and this. And everybody says, terrific, fine, let's move on.
Tell me about the themes that most resonate with you, that you put to your work. You talk about historical, but give me overall themes. What resonates with you?
Injustice, mostly. Personal, and this is going to sound really, it's a wide open thing, but personal fulfillment. I mean, who are you? Where are you going? What are you doing in this life? Why are you unsatisfied? What bugs you? Why are you where you are when you should be someplace else? Or what has somebody done to you? It's what we've done to ourselves over the centuries is, in many cases, abominable. And we've spread so much injustice for the flimsiest of reasons. We have based whole political decisions on who we happen to be organically rather than what we've done by choice. And there's a huge difference because of that. And those are the issues that I generally gravitate towards, but I try not to write issue plays. I write plays about people, normal people who find themselves, for whatever reason, in a bad situation. Maybe something happened to them. Maybe they just made a bad decision, but for what they thought was the right reason. So we explore that, and we explore their journey through the ramifications of what they've done or what has happened to them. The Viking Suicides, which is a play I wrote a number of years ago. It's one of my, in quotes here, American plays. And it concerns a young woman, 15 years old. She's in a very elite high school that, because of its heavy quotes here, progressive tendencies, refuses to teach them anything in fear of foisting opinions upon them that might not be valid. That basically collects their tuition and does almost nothing for them. So she gets no direction there. Her parents are ineffectual parents. One, her mother has so many books on child rearing, she refuses to take command of raising her child, choosing to rely on other people's advice. The father's a bit of a milquetoast. He's not fit for parenting, but he loves his daughter. They both love their daughter. And something happens, and the daughter is taken away from them. And long story short, she becomes the leader of this organization. I'm going to call it a cult, all female, that not only teaches women to fend for themselves in thought, word, and deed, to become stronger as people, but it also teaches them to fight back. And I mean that literally, physically, in ways. So combat abuse, combat injustice. They are taught to become militaristic. And the play concerns the father's journey. He's the only male character in a male actor in a play of 8 or 9 people. He's trying to find her. He's trying to get to her because he loves her. She's his daughter. And his wife is, he and his wife are estranged. So it's his journey, which is weird because this is a woman's play, I think of, but I'm following his journey because he's adrift and he has no clue what's going on, but he's trying to do his best. So, yeah, it's oh my goodness, it's about finding a way. It's about finding a solution. It's about reconciling the things that you've done and the things that have been done to you.
What do you do when you feel blocked?
Okay. I don't believe in writer's block. I believe in mulling, M-U-L-L-I-N-G, which is the process of sitting back and letting this play germinate in your head. Block is a word, I absolutely loathe this term because it is contrary to a writer's ability to create. It formulates a concept. You're blocked. There's something there you can't get around. It almost becomes physical. And the writing process, ideally, if it were a perfect machine, it would be, I sit down and I like I did with my first play, I churn this thing out in 4 days. Let me tell you something, that first version was crap. Right? There was so much stuff in there that was just, I didn't know what I was doing. It was my idea of, quote, what a play should be. But as I grew, I realized I'm going to get a lot of this stuff out. And to do so, I need to give this thing time to germinate. It's like raising a child. There are going to be some days, some years where the child just grows either emotionally, physically, mentally, and there are going to be times when they seem to stop. Okay, so you just have to wait. You can't push. You can't push results. That's going to be, it's going to work against you. So what most people call writer's block, I call taking a timeout. I call letting the play germinate in the back of my head where it does most of the work, and then push itself to the forefront and go, hey, you know, what about this? Will this work? And they say, yeah, okay. You know, I spent 3.5 years on one play. For a full-length play, I will spend over a year usually thinking about it before I write a word. And possibly a year or more writing those words. And then comes the development process. So, like I said, writer's block is it just works against you. It's a term we should all get rid of and just get used to the fact that this is where we slow down. You know, it's like driving from point A to point B. You got a speed limit of 85 miles an hour. Then you hit a town, you got to slow down to 35. But the town's going to end, then you're going to go back up to speed. And that's a terrible analogy. Oh my God, if you can cut that. But it sort of fits the description.
What are your thoughts on where we are as an industry, the current state of things? What are your thoughts on it in general?
Wow, that is such a loaded question.
You can take it from the perspective of a playwright.
Yeah, well, I'm taking it from the perspective of a theater professional, because I've done so many other things besides playwriting, and to me, it's all one thing. But if you want it from the point of view of a playwright, COVID did a lot of damage. But you have to remember that there were people in Aeschylus's time going, the kids today, they're not going to theater. We need to make this relevant. Theater is going to die as an art. And then where will we be? That's been so debunked over the years, no matter what's happened. If the plague didn't kill theater, if COVID didn't kill theater, if Broadway doesn't kill theater, nothing will. We have to remain firm in our faith that theater, I said this once a while back, and Rachel Feeney Williams actually used it, and theater's like a cockroach. It's never going to die. The world can blow up. The cockroaches will still be here. Theater's not going away. So we might as well forget about that. The way theater is now, I think it's growing by leaps and bounds. We have fewer theaters, of course, because of COVID. And a lot of them just went out of business because they couldn't afford to keep going. Theater is a losing business. Most of theater is getting money. You think an artistic director's job is so glamorous, we get to choose plays and become the front, the faceplate of the theater. But no, it's out there grubbing for dinero and to keep the place open. If you're running the Goodman, which is it's millions of dollars a year, or if you're running Bob's storefront thing, it's still money. And that's the largest part of theater. The rest is lagniappe. But I think we're growing. And I think we're growing in terms of viewpoints, because over the past 10, 15 years, 20 years, we're getting lots of new voices. We're getting voices that we have not heard before. We're getting voices that were marginalized, that were ignored. When I was going to Goddard, in Goddard College, which that's a whole nother discussion like that. They just closed it down and sold it. One of the things that my teachers were talking about was the fact that there were so few women involved in the decision-making process or as playwrights. And the percentages of men to women were horrific. It would be like 90 to 10%, 95 to 5% in many cases. And that was so wholly unfair. Things are starting to change. It's starting to grow because theaters are starting to come into being now that are looking for alternate voices that reflect different aspects of not just the American experience, but of a worldwide experience that we have heretofore not been exposed to. And I think it is enriching theater. I think it is making it so much more interesting, because it's comforting to walk in and see folks who look like you tell their stories, and you feel safe. But to walk in there and look at folks whose lifestyle, whose experiences you have no idea of, talk to you about what their reality is, about what their world is, you can't help but open yourself up to it. You can't help but grow as a person, as an artist. Theater is about bringing new understanding. Okay. And it's starting to kick into high gear now because we have so much more of a range of viewpoints to pay attention to be exposed to. And yeah, we took a hit with COVID. And yeah, theater is expensive. And if you want to be rich, don't go into theater. Poets make more money than playwrights do. But it's such a worthwhile experience. And that we keep forgetting is why so many of us go into it. Because like I said before, there's no place I'd rather be than a rehearsal room. It's just watching the work, watching the creation, watching all these people that I've never known before come together and create something that we're all a part of. I'm sorry, you can't beat that. That's, that's perfect.
What are some of the more exciting developments you see in theater pertaining to playwrights as we move forward into this, this digital age and this next of where we're finding ourselves to be?
Yeah. Like I said, COVID changed things. The internet has changed things. I used to spend tons of money Xeroxing my plays and sending these things out. It was expensive. Now we've got Google Forms, we've got Submittable, we've got Slide Room, we've got electronic means of making it so much easier for us to foist our works upon an unsuspecting world. In that respect, it becomes much easier. And in that respect, it becomes a little more dangerous because the easier it is to send things out, the more things we are going to send out. And where we took care before to be absolutely sure that this fit the bill because we didn't want to spend the effort and we didn't want to spend the money shipping it out by the U.S. mail. Now we don't put that effort in. It's like, oh, this might fit. Let's throw it out. Theaters are having a very hard time dealing with the influx, the massive influx of scripts coming their way. And what they're starting to do right now is they're starting to set limits. We'll take the first 100. We'll take the first 200. So the opportunity opens up at midnight. By 1 o'clock, it's closed because there are playwrights out there going tap, 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 send. So that's one way it's changed. Zoom is another one. I use Zoom for group readings. I'm in several reading groups with people around the world. And these are people I would have never met before had it not been for the electronic advantages, the internet, and the new programs that we've come up with. And Zoom has been amazing when it comes to that. I'm trading scripts with people in New Zealand, in Russia. I just had several of my plays translated into Russian because they heard of me. A friend talked to a friend, and this friend saw my stuff online. And they said, oh, hey, can we do this for translation purposes? Terrific. Let's do it. So now I've got 2 plays translated and published in Russian. I might actually get a couple of productions out of that. So in that way, it's been a great boon. There were very few downsides to this, but we still have to learn to navigate the capabilities of what we've been presented with. Humans are not known for their restraint. Okay, just look at Black Friday. They open up the doors and 12,000 people rush in to get a TV. We have to learn to slow down. We have to learn to be a little bit more selective. We have to learn to be a little bit more careful when it comes to our immediate reactions to new opportunities. Theaters are having, like I said, a very hard time dealing with the amount of opportunities they get. I know from on stage, off stage, I send out a call once a year for themed plays. This year I got over 200. I'm going to change my criteria for next year because honestly, I can't read through 200 plays. After a while, I wouldn't know if I got, Angels in America staring me in the face because I'm so play blind that I can't recognize its genius. So I've got to change my criteria for that. And I think a lot of other theaters have already begun to do that. So, but they're also able to specify what they want. We can get down to much more specific requirements: page length, topic, number of characters, political aspects, sexual aspects of whoever is involved in the play. Theater is remaining exactly the same. We're just looking at it through different means of getting into it.
George, you're a treasure. You're a treasure. All right. I ask everyone this question. What is your favorite rejection story?
Okay. Have you heard this from somebody else? Because, okay. This is back in the days when we were sending plays out by paper. And I can't remember what play it was or who sent it back, but I got the play back in the mail. And usually there's a rejection letter. Dear Mr. Sapio, we're sorry, whatever. The usual blah, blah, blah stuff. Or, even worse, it's a Xerox with my name misspelled. A bad Xerox. Okay? This one in particular sent me the script. And it sent me this little 6x4 cardstock with a woodcut drawing on it. And the woodcut was of medieval times. There's a chopping block, and poor unfortunate with his hands tied behind his back, leaning over the chopping block. And above him is this burly, bare-chested executioner with a big hood over his head, holding a double-bladed axe, ready to swing down. And underneath that it said, "Please don't take this the wrong way." And that was the single best rejection slip I've ever gotten. It was concise. And it basically said, don't take this. It actually said, don't take this personally.
That's awesome. That's great.
It was beautiful. I wish I still had it.
Oh, you should frame it. So today's episode was brought to you by Point Park University's MFA in Writing for Screen and Stage. I went there. You should consider it. It's a terrific program, and they do give out artistic gifts. George, thank you so much for joining us today.
Darrin, this has been so much fun. Thank you for having me on the show. I will have to return the favor at some point.
Can't wait.